Well, I'm getting the picture that everybody likes music, so I'm going to do more music stuff. I want to do stuff in VR 180, but the thing that's really the problem is that the PC that I use for processing is sitting on the floor, and I just need to turn it on and hook it up to a monitor and put the stuff on it, do the conversion because it has to get converted to something called uh, it's rectilinear format, video format. That means it turns it from a fisheye lens recording because what it does is it records into a round circle from a fisheye lens, and so there's like two round circles, and then you take that and you throw it into the converter, and it turns it into it basically just kind of expands it out and makes it so that you could wrap it around a sphere, um, or you could wrap around two hemispheres, and I mean you could put it on a two dimensional screen and spread it out, and usually you look at some segment of that screen rather than looking at the whole screen together. If you do look at the whole screen together, then it ends up looking like a fisheye lens, or the way they do it. So I think what they do is they wrap it on a hemisphere, and then they just kind of move you around that hemisphere to look at the. Now they could have it set up so that it looked like um, they could convert it directly from fisheye in the camera, but anyhow, that's what I'd have to go through to get it on VR 180. And so I just woke up. I just woke up, and that's the noises I make whenever I get up. And I was thinking, I have this. We play video games, play Planet Side 2. I'm playing with this guy named Hey Thin Lips. His name is Katra Banjo. He's on YouTube. You might want to go over there and show him a little bit of love because he's only got about 260 subscribers, and he makes a big deal of it, and I'm like, dude, I've got like 5,000, and he's like, that don't matter. These are video gamers. How much video game stuff you got on your not very much, and so I he's a great guy, and but he can get a little abusive sometimes, and a little. He's a bit more out there than I am, but he says I'm out there. I don't know if I'm that out there, but he longs for some sort of war music, the Sinister War, and I was thinking, I can do that stuff, so I'm gonna do some of that right now, and so it goes, boom, stuff like that. I mean, what he usually plays is he plays that dual. What do they call it? The stuff where you're like singing two different tones at the same time, and I can't do that stuff. I mean, I probably could. I'd figure out how to do it, but I can sing guttural bass. I used to be able to sing the song "Asleep in the Deep," and so yeah. Okay, this is completely open source, so if you want to use it in a song, I don't care. Ah 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 boom che boom da che da boom che boom da che boom che boom da che da boom che boom da to bedu boom boom to de de ah de ta de to da do de da boom che da cha ba do boom chop de boom chop de boom chop de down do la 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 bit chop be chop believe chop la da do p da do cha do da do cha do 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 cha do 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 dee da banana 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 dee da dee da dee da dee da 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 do 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 da da do chap da to ba do chap da da boo chap da boo ba do. I was looking up on YouTube, and I thought Neil Peart just quitted Rush, and it turned out that he died, and I was like, what? I was like, why did somebody tell me Neil Peart died? And I was like, no, there's like only two guys in Rush, and their best drummer. I mean, who the heck can they replace Neil Peart with, Well, and you can't really replace Neil Peart. Come on. And it was just like hearing yesterday that Louis Anderson died, and that was more a big deal to me than Meatloaf dying. But I mean, because Louis Anderson was a real comic, and Meatloaf was okay. To me, Meatloaf was kind of a one-hit wonder because he had Paradise by the Dashboard Light, but he was a bigger guy in the industry because he was kind of a musician type guy, like Todd Rundgren, and Todd knew Meatloaf, and so he had a lot of friends in the music industry, I guess, and so yeah, and I think the Sparks said that Todd gave them their start, and Todd gave Meatloaf his start, so Todd's, he got put into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and, these guys can't be anywhere near death because my parents are still alive, and they're old enough to be their parents, Um, I was born late. Let's put it that way. I mean, if I had been born when my dad was in his 20s, I'd be their age. That's how old my parents are, and my mom wouldn't have been. My mom would have been like 14 or something. But my father married young. He was old, but he married young, a young girl, and so anyhow, I identify more with people who are older than me than I do with people my own age, and it's because I imagine that if I had been born when my dad was in his prime, I probably would have been their age. So, but Louis Anderson died, and some guy from the Ventures, which was that band. You know the the guitar play. No, let's see. No, 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 no. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. You've heard that tune played on a guitar. Well, that I think that was the Ventures, and so it was a member of their band that had died yesterday, and probably the guy who plays that solo, or plays that melody. But they had a lot of songs back then, kind of instrumentals. They didn't sing to. It was basically surf rock music, surfer music, and stuff you'd play if they show a film of somebody doing a half pike, and you would hear the that was the kind of music back in the 50s and 60s these guys played, and inspired a lot of musicians, because it was out there. It was something that sounded otherworldly to them, and then those guys were more challenged to create stuff that sounded otherworldly to us. So I mean, these were guys that would have inspired guys like Tom Scholz, and then Tom Scholz would have created the stuff that that my generation would hear on the radio, like it's more than a feeling. Dun 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 dun. Blows out today, dun dun dun, pick you up and make you away. Dun 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 dun. Smoking, 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 tonight, talking, yeah. And that smoking from Boston is what I was trying to do. And don't and Foreplay is another one. I think Foreplay is the one that goes. Foreplay comes before More Than a Feeling. I think, and you have to play the one, and you have to play Foreplay and then More Than the Feeling, because it doesn't sound right unless you do that. And Foreplay is the one that starts out. It's more than a feeling. But that whole Boston album is what's called it's a complete work, and you have to listen to end to end. and it's called album-oriented rock, okay? And that's the idea, is that you're not listening to just one song, you listen to the entire album. And we don't have album oriented rock anymore because people buy MP3s. They don't buy albums, they buy MP3s. And so you don't put a record on the record turntable and play one half of it and then flip it over and play the other half of it, which is what album oriented rock was. Then we got CDs and we didn't have to flip the record. In fact, we could have a dual record set, or even, let me see, CD can handle up to 88 minutes, and one record could be about 33 minutes. So you could handle two records on a CD and then some. And it was really kind of a curse more than it was a godsend later on in the 90s, because you would give these musicians a CD, and the ones that were very persnickety and detailed, it would take them forever to create an album, which is probably the reason why it took forever for somebody like Guns N' Roses to come out with an album, is because CDs just take. I mean, every CD is like every musician. If every musician fills up a CD, it's like a musician from the 70s having to create a double record set every time, and which is just crazy. I mean, you only did that. I mean, it took ELO out of the blue about a year or two to create that album. And I mean, that what happened was that they released New World Record, and then they didn't have anything for like a couple of years. And in the middle of that, they released the box set, but then they had Out of the Blue. And the reason why Out of the Blue took so long is because it was a double record set, it wasn't a single record. And so in the 90s, you can imagine how in the world you're going to fill up a CD worth of music. Oh, techno, electronica music, grunge rock, where people are just, and that's the reason why there were so many shitty albums in the 90s, is that they were just trying to fill up all that space. And it wasn't like it was a complete art work of art that they were working with. In the 80s, you got some good CDs, but that was just because and there was much less, there was more money still in the pot, but in the 90s it was kind of running out, because and they were trying to, I figure they had much more musicians, because everybody wanted to be on a record album, and you could put them on everybody on a record album because CDs were cheaper to produce than records or something. It and then the internet hit, and that fucked up everything. So the other thing was the CDs was that they were already in a digital format, so you didn't have to record them into an audio format and deal with all the warping of the records, because CDs had no warping. So because they went from records to CDs, it made it so much easier to turn the CDs into MP3s, and that's what fucked the industry, was the CDs. But now what they do is they use MP3 or they use compressed audio as the go-to format, and that fucked up the sound of the CD, because the CD had much more pure sound than the MP3, and some people say that even the LP had more pure sound than the MP3, but they completely forget that the records warp. And so if they like the sound of the record, it's probably because it's not a perfect tone. It warbles, and they probably addicted to the sound of this, that the sound is more analog and it warbles rather than that it's a consistent frequency. that the frequency is perfect. And they might run it through a reverb or something or an echo, and it comes out sounding kind of fantastic, because from an LP and from a CD you can't get that kind of effect, because what it's doing is it's changing the tone slightly. It's giving you a kind of a flanging effect. And so, but one thing I tell to I would, if I could just talk to the entire record industry, I would tell them, realize that in the 70s, the LP record was the only replayable media. And so that meant that if you wanted to do something right now, you couldn't go to the TV and say, I want to watch Ghostbusters. You couldn't go to the internet and say, I want to listen to this song. All you could do is pull out a record and put it on a turntable and hit and put the needle down. Or you could probably get a cassette tape player, but that didn't really come around until the 80s, when people had Walkmans and things like that. And get what they called ghetto blasters, but black people don't like that name, so you call them boom boxes, And I mean, ghetto blaster is a racist term for a boom box, because people in the ghetto had their boom boxes, and I'm not saying the only black people were in the ghetto. The thing is that it's derogatory. Um, because people in the ghetto had their boom boxes, and they'd go out on the street and they'd play that boom from boom box, and some guy would be doing some break dancing with a boom box. So wherever the boom box was, there was a party. And I guess that was the thing, is any time you wanted to have a party, all you had to have was a boom box. And so they called them ghetto blasters. We called them ghetto blasters. I think that to us it was kind of cool to call them ghetto blasters, but it's derogatory anyhow. In 1980, my father gave each one of us kids, and there are 3 kids in my family, and he gave each one of us a Panasonic Platinum boombox. And it was the one that had the plastic round um, matrix grating that was not it. It was molded plastic, I think, and it wasn't metal. It would have been nice maybe if it was metal, but it lasted pretty well anyhow. And had the fold down front. You put your cassette in, and then you fold it up. It had plastic. It was, I think it was metal. It had metal um, buttons at the top for stop, and for I think there was a pause, and there was a stop, and there was a forward rewind, and then you had the play, which had a little orange button in the center of it that if you pressed it down, it would record and play at the same time. So it would go into record mode. It had these flip switches at the top, and sliders, and the sliders were for treble and bass and volume, left and right. And then there was some switches that would pick your mode, whether or not you wanted to play the radio, or you wanted to do the tape player, if you're going to use external audio inputs. And I forgot what, there were some other switches on the thing, but and then you could select you could select AM or FM, and so you could go through and you could select what kind of tape you were using, whether it was a metal tape, or if it was uh, or actually it was the different filters: metal for metal tapes, Dolby for Dolby recorded stuff, and then the normal recording, non-filter playback. But it was really cool, and I found out that if you took an audio cable and stuck it through the output ports, and you recorded, um, you could do overdubbing onto a recording. So you could record over a recording, or something like that. Um, I'm trying to remember how that works. Well, I used it once. I had a reel to reel, and what I would do is I would play the reel to reel through my tape recorder while recording, and so I could record from one input from the outputs. I could record audio into that so it acted like a mixer, and one it could bring in some audio from the output, and it could bring the rest from the input, and so you could create like echo effects from the reel to reel. And so I connect these devices together in such a way as to create a kind of echo or reverb into recordings. Also, something that was cool that I could do with the reel to reel is I could flip the tape over. You can actually do this with a cassette tape, but what you do is you just take the tape and you flip it over and you reel it over, and then you can start recording, and then you flip the tape over again, and I mean you rewind it and fast forward it so that it gets it back to normal, and you can do backmasking with it. So that was a way you could do backmasking with a cassette tape. And backmasking is when you're like playing a record backwards so that you can hear Paul is Dead and things like that from Beatles albums and stuff. So my normal voice is just talk low like this. Um, and when I sing, I can sing kind of really high notes, but that's not my normal voice. I I would be better off singing songs from like anything from the Crash Test Dummies, because the leader of their band and I are have the same guttural. I mean, this is how we talk. We're low, and anyhow, I think I'm gonna cut this thing off, and I had what I wanted to say. I'll just